Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to. On this Thoughtful Thursday, what I want to talk about is the concept of leadership as something that you perfect or can become perfect at. I was looking at a picture online that someone shared on Instagram, that kind of scrolling through things, and it showed a picture of a person who was like a champion athlete, and they were standing on like the podium. You see like first place, second place, third place, and they're in the middle of that first place podium, the gold medal on their neck. And it says, and there's a line that kind of divides the page in half, and it says what you see, and you see them standing on the podium with the gold medal, and then underneath it says what you don't see, and it shows this timeline of like 15 years prior to that, and the successes and the failures and the lost races and the broken bones and the toils and tribulations and all these things the person went through in order to get to where they are. And we have this kind of notion in our minds that, you know, when we become aware of a person is when their journey started. You know, like you see somebody who's a fantastic athlete who, you know, kind of enters the media zeitgeist because the Olympics are coming up or because the World Series is on TV or whatever's happening, and we start to hear about an athlete for the first time, and we hear about how amazing they are. Like, oh my gosh, they're a phenom. They came out of nowhere, right? They you know, this is the first time you've heard of them and they're already a champion. It's like they didn't wake up that morning and decide, oh, I guess I could run or hit a ball or whatever it is. That happened years before any of what we're seeing, but yet for some reason we have this kind of like this kind of self-absorption way of looking at things, which is to say that, well, if I had never heard of them before, it means they didn't exist before, right? And I think leadership is largely the same way. We see people who are profiled as great leaders. We see the, you know, of like my parents' generation, you know, the Eisenhowers, and of like, you know, my grandparents' generation, the Eisenhowers, my parents' generation, you know, the Ken Blanchards and the, you know, those kind of things. And then of our generation, the Sheryl Sandberg and the Gary Vaynerchuk, and, you know, and you see all these people and you think, wow, those are amazing leaders. They're born leaders. They've kind of they woke up today and decided, I'm a leader of people. They found their calling, and we don't look at what they went through to get there. Some of them do a better job than others at talking about the stuff they had to put up with and the failures they had, but others don't. But what are your thoughts about this? I feel like this is something that we can have this failure to see the past or see what went into a person.
No, I agree with you. I think it's really like, I think I see it more on like social media and like LinkedIn and other places where like there's just this idea of leadership, and maybe it's because like we're constantly looking for content and we see all the memes and the videos and we see the stories and the, you know, sometimes the template stories that we see. I hired somebody and they were late to their interview, and it's like this diatribe, like, you know, like it's like, oh, what a great leader. And so I'm probably somewhat like in a space where like I'm just over that type of stuff, but it's a good reminder and thought around that, like, leadership is so much bigger than just like the decision in the moment. It's so much bigger than having you know, the right words to say or the right definitions of what type of leader that you are. And it is so much, to me, more about the experiences that you have and those trials and tribulations and those mistakes that you've made over time, and also the acceptance and understanding that you're going to continue to make mistakes. Right? As long as we've been leaders, as long as we've had this podcast, the hours and hours of us talking about leadership, and all the time and effort we put into it, here's the reality. I still make mistakes. I still apply the wrong theory at the wrong time. I still show up as a human being with blind spots and with things that I have to continue to work on. I still misread the room. Like these are just things that you accept as a leader, and they don't feel good in the moment, and sometimes you don't want to accept that you did them, And sometimes you question yourself, like, how did I miss that? Like, as much as I've done this and for as long as I've done it, like, how could I possibly have missed that? But that actually happens. And I think it's important that people know that and understand that and feel that, because it can feel like your world is crumbling. It can feel like you would go home and say, I'm a horrible leader. Why am I even, like, by making some of these types of mistakes, versus realizing it doesn't feel good in the moment. I didn't do the right thing, or I made a mistake, or I made the wrong call. Why did that happen? What was the blind spot? How do I move on from here? Like, I think it's just so important in the leadership space. And we've talked about it in the podcast before of, like, I expect new leaders to make mistakes, because you're learning things for the first time. You're applying a new type of responsibility or authority in different spaces. And, like, you're going to do things that you're going to have to learn from. But as long as we're learning and moving forward, then we're in a good spot there. So, like, I think it's so important that we talk about it and remind people that that leadership is messy. And leadership is a trail of successes along with a trail of mistakes.
Right. Well, and you just said it yourself. You said you expect new leaders to make mistakes. Well, what we're saying basically is we expect seasoned leaders to make mistakes too, not just new leaders. And there's no the best way I can think of to kind of to say this is that the culture and the environment and the people you are leading will change over time. And so there's a reason why, Dwight Eisenhower is quoted in the 1950s saying leadership is getting people to do things that they don't want to do, right? Or something along those lines. It's like maybe that was the case 70 years ago. Maybe that's what leadership was. It's not today. And so a person once you can get to a place where you could admit that a person was a great leader or an effective leader at this point in time, but they'd be completely out of their element today. The Jack Welch, eliminate the bottom 10% every single year. That worked really well for him in the 1970s and 1980s. It would not work today. And so the leaders, the only way that you can perfect leadership is if the environment and the people and the culture stays completely static for the rest of forever. And then you can eventually get to the point where your mistakes are so few and far between that you could essentially say that you have perfected this. But it changes so fast that you are going to make mistakes. And so, Lorenzo, what I want to ask you is, I want to know about a time when you made a mistake, but it was doing something that you'd done a whole bunch of times in the past that worked really well for you, and that it was almost part of who you are as a leader. It was such it was a rock in terms of, like, this is going to be here for a long time. And then you did it and it went the wrong way, and you went, oh my gosh, I thought this was something I could continue doing, but I can no longer do it. Clearly the culture has changed, the people have changed. So I want to ask you that, but first I want to get up to word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo, tell me about a time when something you had done many times as a leader that was really successful, something you just kind of like put it into your bag of tricks that you just love doing. It just stopped working and you had to completely change the way you did it.
It's funny. I think I immediately thought of a time when I assumed that a team that I was going to lead, and a newer team to me, that we all had the same vision of why we existed and what we're looking to accomplish, because we said the same words and we work for the same organization. And I just had this assumption that the vision is good and that it's super clear and everybody knows what we're looking to accomplish here. And then I went into clarity very quickly around, like, well, then here's the expectations. This is how I expect you to show up. This is how I can show up for you. And this is how we're going to move forward with this type of work. And expectations were clear and people had questions and it all felt really, really good. And then as people were starting to execute on this and actually show up in this way and attempt to do these things, what I really quickly realized was that there was a disconnect in the vision, that I had spent no time bringing that to life for the individual people on the team. And that's huge for me. Like, I feel like sometimes I spend a lot of time in the vision space,
right?
Because now I don't want, and now thinking back on it, it's probably because I made that mistake where I realized.
Did you just learn something in the moment? Like, as we're recording?
I just connected dots.
Love that.
Exactly. It's it's probably wise, because I realize that if I don't bring that vision down to the individual leader, if I don't make sure that I have helped to tie what they do every day and their passion to the larger picture of what we're looking to accomplish, then they go out there and they try to execute these things, and it's like it's a facade, and it's not real, and they don't bring the same level of energy and confidence to the expectations. And that was a big lesson for me, because it was like what is going on? Like, this is not working. Like,
Right.
this is like tried and true. This strategy works. I've done this a bunch of times. What's going on right now? And that's what I realized, was that I took for granted the assumption and the idea that because it was same organization, and because everybody kind of works on the same umbrella of vision, and that people had tenure and experience, that it was just easy for them and they understood what that meant. But nobody had really done the work of connecting them personally to the larger vision, which made it really hard for them to show up in the space I needed them to show up in.
Yeah, I like that example a lot. I think when it comes to vision, as time goes on, if the vision doesn't change and the people don't change, then less time can be spent on it, clearly. But even when the team stays the same for a period of years and the vision doesn't change, you still have to put work into the vision aspect of it as time goes on. You have to revisit it. People have to be able to see that North Star reiterated to them periodically in order to be reminded of, why did you get up today and come to work? Well, this is why. This is that vision. And I think where a lot of leaders go wrong when it comes to that is they assume that, they did a great job of doing, telling that vision and explaining it in a way that connects people. And then there is a very, very slow attrition of the team or turnover where people change out. And over a period of like a year or 2 years, maybe 30% of the team is different. And to assume that because you went over it with the initial group of people, that they will disseminate it to everybody who's new in the proper way, it can also be a failure. And so just you're being able to revisit it over time, especially as new people come and go from the team, I think it is really, really important. I think you do that well. So that's interesting that that it's something that you did the wrong way first before doing it the right way. But again, it goes to show that yes, no matter how good you are at doing something, you can make mistakes. And the mistake might not be that you did something wrong. It might be that you did it right. Then the situation told you in hindsight that it was wrong. And so just because that happened, it doesn't mean that you need to revamp the way you lead people. It means that you just need to tailor your leadership towards that particular situation. I think that's what leadership is that what you can get better at over time is the ability to move through these mistakes more quickly, to be able to self-reflect and realize why a mistake happened, and how to make sure that you are less likely to make it again in the future. So you're not making the same mistake over and over again. That's good. But to assume that you can get to a place where the mistakes just don't happen anymore, I think is it's naive to think that, and you're just going to end up getting depressed or thinking you shouldn't be where you are as a leader, when in actuality, you probably are doing a lot of good.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And have a great day.